From here on in the course, one of the things that we're going to be doing is analysing legal problems to make sure that we can think the way that lawyers think about problems, so we develop those thinking skills. Also develops our communication skills, and we'll be doing that through a very structured approach, and that's what I'd like to go through now, something called the ILAC method. So let's go. So one of the things that's hopefully come through thus far is the complexity that's involved in understanding the law in operation. So for a start, we can see that the law comes from two sources and is set out in two places, in both statutes and then the judgments, either common law itself or interpretations of those statutes. So most legal problems can involve a rather simple application of the law, and they don't end up in court. You don't want to go to court because it costs a lot of money, and we really only use court cases where there's ambiguity and disputes. To run a court case, both sides have to have a reasonable argument. Otherwise, it'd just be an entire waste of money and time. Now, we're going to exclude a few little situations where it can be used as business strategy, such as in patent wars, in technology. But outside of those limited examples, you do not want to go to court, okay? You want to avoid it at all costs. So you're only going to go when you actually have a reasonable argument. One of the other things to remember is that just because you have a legal right doesn't mean you should exercise it. It actually might be a bad strategic move. You might actually use it as leverage to actually make an agreement, something we're going to come to next, the alternatives to going to court. But if you're going to make the decision whether to go to court, whether to pursue something or not, understanding how lawyers think can help you weigh and appreciate the advice that they actually give you. And as well as doing that, the approach we're going to develop here gives you a different way of thinking about problems that can benefit you in other areas of life. Okay, so to summarize again, some legal problems are actually quite simple, where the legal advice you're going to get is quite certain. However, if there's a kind of dispute, it's because the legal advice is quite uncertain. Uncertain in the sense of there's probably two good arguments. Otherwise, you wouldn't be thinking about going to court. So it's best to understand the nature of the advice you're getting. Is it certain or uncertain? Why is the lawyer advising you that way? In order to understand how lawyers reach conclusions, we're going to work on analysing problems from a legal perspective. Again, the point is for you not to become a lawyer. Rather, it's to get some understanding of how lawyers approach problems. So good legal thinking involves a logical approach. Now, you can have creativity in a complex application of this approach, but essentially we're going through 4 steps. The first step is to determine the legal issue. Now, this is a really important thing that students can struggle with for some time. We're not worried about the factual issue. Well, we're trying to solve the factual issue, but we solve the factual issue by identifying what the legal issue is. What is the legal problem? If we know what the legal problem is, then we can identify the relevant law. So if we know what the problem is, we've got the right law, then we apply the law to that legal issue, which allows us to draw a conclusion. There's lots of different approaches that use this basic framework for analysing a legal problem. Lots of acronyms out there. We're going to use the ILAC method to help us remember it. ILAC is simply an acronym that stands for issue. What is the legal issue? Law. What is the relevant law? Application. Apply the law to the facts. C. Draw a conclusion. We're going to follow this 4-step process, and we're going to use it to communicate advice in a business context. So what it will also help us do is clearly communicate our knowledge. Okay, so it's not only about an analysis and thinking, it's also a great communication tool. Okay, we're going to come back to ILAC. In fact, you're probably going to get a bit sick of ILAC. But I think it's a great way to help you understand about legal thinking and about how to think about problems in general and communicate your recommendations and solutions easily. Okay. Just before we finish off, we've got one more thing to do: alternative dispute resolution. That's next.